The biggest game by far this weekend was Michigan at Ohio State. It was number 3 ranked Michigan on the road at number 2 ranked Ohio State. Two of the top college football teams in America, both ranked 11-0 going in. And Michigan found a way to win. Michigan won 45-23, which was very, very surprising to me. Michigan, in fact, was even pulling away by the end of this football game. Going into this game, Ohio State had won every single game by double digits. Their closest game was all the way back in week 1 when they beat Notre Dame 21-10 in a very convincing way. In contrast, I thought Michigan had been less convincing this year. Their route to 11-0 was, let's be clear. I respect Michigan. They've been dominant all year. But there were a couple moments where, they beat Maryland by barely a touchdown. Their scariest win by far was against Illinois, where it required a last-second field goal. And you're like, this team is supposed to be able to beat Ohio State? Like, you barely beat 7-4 Illinois. And I want to be clear, if you step back and look at the whole of Michigan's season, they were dominant all year. But I really did not expect to see Michigan beating Ohio State, and especially not the way it went down. Now, this game was really close in the first half. Ohio State actually led 20-17 at halftime. And Michigan, this is a massive key to this football game. Michigan was really, really struggling to run the football in the first half. The only reason why Michigan got 2 touchdowns in the first half of this football game was they got 2 long touchdown passes to Cornelius Johnson. He beat man coverage twice. One of them was a curl route. He broke a tackle, made a man miss, ran for a 69-yard touchdown down the sideline. And on the second one, he ran a double move like a corner post, wide open down the middle of the field for a 75-yard touchdown. But even that, one was a really nice play. You broke a tackle, you got a touchdown. Another one was a wide open deep ball, kind of a blown coverage, a great double move. I think at first, early on in this football game, you could write off the success Michigan was having on offense as kind of fluky and even maybe lucky. They weren't running the football. They were getting big plays on offense, throwing the football. But aside from 2 big plays, a 69-yard touchdown and a 75-yard touchdown, I think it was very easy to be skeptical of Michigan still by halftime. And then in the second half, it happened again. Michigan threw another long touchdown pass. They beat man coverage. It was clear Ohio State's really struggling with man coverage, and they're blitzing to stop the run, but what they're doing is sacrificing their coverage, and they're not playing coverage well at all. And I really want to give a shout-out to Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy, because earlier in the year, Michigan made a change at quarterback. They switched from last year's quarterback, Cade McNamara, to J.J. McCarthy. I remember they played Hawaii. J.J. McCarthy was incredible. They're like, yeah, this is our guy the rest of the year. And the belief was J.J. McCarthy is more talented. He can take Michigan farther. He's young. He's only 19. But this game against Ohio State is really the first time all year I've been like, yeah, the move paid off. Because all year it's been good, but they've been a team that heavily runs the football. They haven't needed J.J. McCarthy to really win with his arm all that much. But in this game against Ohio State, the move finally paid off. And J.J. McCarthy had 4 touchdowns in this game. He ran for 1. Passing, he was 12 for 24, 263 yards, 3 big touchdown passes. The J.J. McCarthy move, here is where that paid off. And I remember when it happened saying, if Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, they're going to have to play a more dynamic quarterback. They made the move to J.J. McCarthy. And here we are, 12 weeks later going, yeah, look, it worked. Genius move. I love it. If you're going to talk about numbers and stats, though, you also got to talk about Michigan receiver Cornelius Johnson. Dude had 4 catches for 160 yards and 2 long touchdowns. He made a massive difference in this football game. Cornelius Johnson did. Now, on all 3 of his long touchdown passes, J.J. McCarthy did a great job navigating the pass rush. The first one, the curl on a 3rd down, went for a 69-yard touchdown to Cornelius Johnson on the left sideline. He was getting hit as he threw. He's taking a hit. He's he's releasing the ball as he's hit, handling pressure really well. On the second one, he steps up in the pocket, avoids a sack, throws a long touchdown. Again, on the third one, he did another move. He stepped up, found a long touchdown for 45 yards. J.J. McCarthy not only did a great job avoiding the rush and getting rid of the ball, but Michigan would not have won this game without him. He was the difference in this football game. And it's kind of an exciting thing because he's only 19. He's a young guy. He's in his second year in college football. There's a bright future there at Michigan. They got a dynamic, really fun quarterback. He's not amazing, but I thought he handled the pressure really well. And he's so young. The future is very, very bright for him. Now, we got to talk about the running game because in the first half of this football game, Michigan literally ran the ball for around only 10 yards. I mean, they just did not have a running game in the first half. They have multiple injuries to the running backs. Blake Corum, their star running back, who's been their number one guy all year. Blake Corum was dealing with a left leg injury, and he only had 2 carries for 6 yards. Their number 2 running back, Donovan Edwards, had a cast on his hand, and he couldn't catch the ball out of the backfield. He could only hold the ball with one hand. Like you saw it all game. He wouldn't cover the ball up, and he's running up the middle. It was very scary, and I'm like, I worry he's going to fumble. And, in fact, Michigan even briefly put a linebacker in the game at running back. They put Khalil Mullings at running back, who played running back in high school. And I know Khalil Mullings only had 1 carry for 0 yards, but I really like the fact they put him in there because what it did was set up a trick play. There was a play on, Donovan Edwards, their number 2 running back, the guy that was playing for most of the game, again, only has one hand, so he can't throw a pass. There was a huge 3rd and 1 where they handed off to Khalil Mullings, and he actually threw the ball downfield for a first down. They set that up by putting Khalil Mullings in the game earlier at running back. It didn't work. They didn't get any yards, but it made it less weird and bizarre when Khalil Mullings came in the game on 3rd and 1. They didn't expect a trick play. They thought they were going to run up the middle again like they did the first time. And I think it's not only a cool trick play, but it's the way that Michigan set it up by saying, we're going to put him in the game early, make Michigan, make Ohio State's defense kind of not think it's a bizarre, abnormal thing. We're going to play this guy at running back. But really the reason they put him in was because they needed someone who could throw the ball downfield and didn't have a cast on their hand. So I love that. And in the second half of this football game, Michigan finally started winning up front with their offensive line. And they were just getting, run after run after impressive run. Donovan Edwards had 2 really long touchdown runs, 75 yards and 85 yards. One was a 92-yard drive, 3 plays. The last play of that drive, 85-yard touchdown run, and you're like, oh my goodness, how things have changed. Because after only getting right around 10 yards rushing in the first half. I looked up the stat. I couldn't find it. I remember it was literally 10 yards. I don't want to say it was exactly 10 yards, but it was right around 10 yards rushing at halftime. Michigan finished this football game with 252 yards rushing almost entirely. That was all in the second half. And, for Donovan Edwards, with only one good hand, a cast on one hand free to grip the football, he ran for 216 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then on top of that, the big reason why Michigan won this football game, J.J. McCarthy was awesome. The running game came on strong in the second half, and then Michigan's defense in the second half of this football game, you got to give them a round of applause. Mike Stander still made a bunch of big plays in the secondary. Ohio State only scored 3 points in the entire second half of this football game. That's crazy to me. That's one of the most potent and dangerous offenses in college football. And Michigan's defense held them to 3 points in the entire second half. They picked off Ohio State's quarterback, C.J. Stroud, twice in the fourth quarter. C.J. Stroud had 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. I'm telling you, Michigan's defense really, really impressed me in the second half of this football game. And in fact, I would say that Michigan was just a totally different team in the second half. They finally started running the ball. They played great defense. It was not only a surprise to me that Michigan won this football game, but it was a surprise that they won by double digits. The way Michigan won. They won 45-23. They won by 22 points. And if you told me at halftime, again at halftime, Ohio State was winning 20-17. And at halftime, Michigan had around 10 yards rushing. If you told me at halftime that Michigan was going to go on to win the game by 22 points, finish with over 250 yards rushing, and on top of that, one of the most dangerous and potent offenses in all of college football, Ohio State, was only going to score 3 points, I would have laughed at you, and yet that is exactly what happened. It's really, really cool to see. I just like the chaos. I like the drama. I like the story. To have the underdog team, Michigan, who at halftime, not running the ball well, They've given up 20 points to Ohio State to totally work things out in the second half where you shut down Ohio State's offense. You dominate running the football. I love that. And what a comeback. Comeback's not the right word, but what a change in the second half for Michigan. By the way, Michigan has now won 2 years in a row against Ohio State. Michigan won at Ohio State on the road at Columbus, Ohio for the first time since November 18, the year 2000. Tom Brady was a rookie backup on the Patriots roster, hadn't played yet when the last time Michigan went on the road at Ohio State and beat Ohio State. Now, we got to give some respect to Michigan's head coach, Jim Harbaugh. In 2020, Jim Harbaugh got so much criticism. He went 2-4. It was the really awkward, weird Rona season where they only played 6 games. And some people, I got a message about this. I forget who sent me that message. I apologize. I think it was on Instagram. Someone sent me a message about this. But there were people that either were just kind of making a meme and joking or actually really wanted Jim Harbaugh fired in 2020. I remember how bad it was. I remember even talking about how, is Jim Harbaugh ever going to make this work at Michigan? I was one of those people who was like, dude, he's going to win 10 games every year, but he can't beat Ohio State. He runs into a ceiling every single year. Like 2019, 2020, that's the conversation that was going on. Now, in the last 2 years at Michigan, Jim Harbaugh has gone 24-2 and beat Ohio State 2 years in a row and has had back-to-back 12-win seasons. Tip of my cap to Jim Harbaugh. I love it, man. He really did. It took time, but he's built a really impressive program at Michigan, his alma mater. And I just think another way that Jim Harbaugh deserves respect is that after the game, Fox was trying to interview him. They caught him while he was giving J.J. McCarthy like a little I love you speech and a hug. They tried to interview him. Jim Harbaugh's deflects all attention to his players and walks away. And then he comes back dragging Donovan Edwards and plops Donovan Edwards in the spotlight. And once again, Jim Harbaugh leaves. It wasn't about Jim Harbaugh on Saturday night. Jim Harbaugh made it about his players. And that's another thing I just love about him is his humility and the way he treats his players. That's just awesome. I would imagine, by the way, after losing for the second straight year to Michigan, I think some people in Columbus, Ohio, are starting to have some questions about their head coach, Ryan Day. Ryan Day's a very good head coach, but he didn't build this Ohio State program. He inherited a really, really incredible Ohio State football program when Urban Meyer left. Ryan Day has lost a national title. He's lost to Michigan twice. And the words that I can't get out of my head are actually the words of Jim Harbaugh. Some people are, they start on third base. Some people start on third base and think they hit a triple. Jim Harbaugh worked his way up and really has built this Michigan program to where they are now, beating Ohio State 2 years in a row. Ryan Day is a trust fund baby. He was handed a ton of wealth, and he hasn't squandered it, but he hasn't taken Ohio State to new heights in his time with Ohio State. That's worth saying. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. What I am saying is hasn't won a national title, lost to Michigan 2 years in a row, and at Ohio State, where the pressure is really high, that matters a lot to lose to Michigan 2 years in a row. By the way, I think it's worth noting, let's just leave the Ryan Day criticism there for now, because the year isn't over. As a result of this football game, Ohio State is 11-1. They will probably not be ranked in the top 4. I think the rankings come out tomorrow on Tuesday for the college football playoff. But I think there's still a really good chance that Ohio State will make it into the college football playoff. We're going to have to wait and see. The Big Ten title game will be between Michigan and, it's kind of a joke, unranked Purdue. It's the Big Ten East versus the Big Ten West. Purdue won the West, and then out east you got Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State and all the good football teams, unfortunately. Now, I walked away from this game really hoping that TCU is going to lose in the Big 12 title game, because I want to see Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and USC in the college football playoff. Those are the 4 teams I'm excited to watch in the college football playoff. Sounds good to me. And I don't know that it's Like, I just don't feel comfortable entirely writing Ohio State off. They had one half of bad football all year. They lost in the second half to Michigan, and that's the only time Ohio State had a bad 2 quarters of football all year. Like, I just don't think it's who's more likely to beat Georgia in the college football playoff. If you give TCU the number 4 seed or Ohio State, I think Ohio State gives Georgia a much better game. So I don't think the story is over for Ohio State. In fact, I'm hoping it's not. And I would love to see. My dream scenario is that we get Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, USC number 3, and Ohio State number 4. Let's have Ohio State play Georgia, and then if Ohio State can win, and if Michigan can beat USC, which very possible, in fact, most likely, then we could get a rematch of Ohio State, Michigan in the national title game, and that sounds incredible. We might also get, Georgia, Michigan, something like that. But those are the 4 teams I want to see in the college football playoff.